Hey guys, and thanks for tuning in to the Original Strength Podcast. I have brought my special guest, Andrew Hutchinson, back because Andrew was talking about some really fascinating stuff the first time we got to chat. And so I brought him back to hear more of the things he has to say. For instance, he told me that there's a way to reset the body with the top lip. So I'm really curious about that. So, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andrew Hutchinson. Andrew, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me back.
So tell me, what were you talking about when you said you could reset the body with the top lip?
Yeah, makes it sound like I've overstated it now. You can reset everything with just the top lip. Well, I remember back in the kind of early days of being unwell and starting that journey of connecting dots in this area and that area, and again, it's all connected. It was a crazy little journey, but I came across this location on the top lip, if you like, which has been referred to as human reset button. And apparently, if you press down on between these two acupuncture or acupressure points, you can actually bring somebody back from being unconscious in literally in an instant, just like that. And it just so happens to be the same place where if you close your eyes and you focus on feeling your breath going in and out, you can feel these two locations, which one is known to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and one's known to activate the sympathetic nervous system. So when you breathe in, you can almost feel it, just this breeze on the inner of the roof of the mouth at the front there, where it's sympathetic, which obviously goes with the breathing in. And as you breathe out, you can feel it just slightly lower down, probably about half a centimeter, a bit further down, which is parasympathetic. And right about this location is known for, as I say, you squeeze that and it brings somebody back to life. Also happens to be when your tongue rests in the right place in your mouth. It connects the main energy circuit that flows around the body and all these kind of things. And it's well known in yoga as being a place that they would start as a focus point for breathing. And with a lot of the kind of more esoteric Eastern traditions. So I remember just being shown it. I think I mentioned to you last time that I kind of went from being in the depths of rooting around with science and reading stuff and getting lost down various rabbit holes, and then coming back to just asking, please show me. Whether you want to see that as asking God, asking the blueprint of the body, and it was the location I was kind of led to, if you like. I just started focusing on this place, and it was from there that I started looking into, well, why is this doing what it's doing? Because when I brought my awareness there, it was like all these signals just came up from the depths within me. In the same way that if you were crawling and you slowed that crawl down, all of a sudden, when you've got your weight on one hand and one shoulder, and you can feel all that stuff going on all of a sudden that you wouldn't have felt if you were crawling at a faster speed, you start to feel all those things that are less than optimal, shall we say, within you. Well, when you focus on this place, all these signals come through with a great strength, especially if you close your eyes. And the conclusion I eventually came to, and I won't bore you with all the various scientific theories, because as you know, a lot of those theories, you start going down here and you go, oh, well, that's connected to that, and that's connected to that. And because the orbicularis oris is connected to all these muscles in the face, it does this. And then you get so far and you go, yeah, do you know what? It's all connected. And you come back and you go, right, okay, just do it. And what I believe is it brings about, you've heard the expression stiff upper lip.
Yes.
If you bring your awareness to your upper lip, all right, particularly if you close your eyes, you will just notice, I've not met anyone yet that doesn't notice just this calm, this peace, just this sense, just this absolute, not tranquility, but it's, if you try it, you'll see. Like you say, just try it. And what I believe happens is you basically bring about what I would call facial neutrality. And if you think that when we take information in, we take it in obviously through the senses. Take away our senses and that's our experience of this world. If you take away all of our senses, then it's like, well, are we at one with God then? Where? So if you have nothing going in via the face, because if you imagine facial expressions are, I would argue, for want of an exact figure, I would argue they're 9/10 of the messaging that we send into the system is in facial expressions. So if you feel pain, I would argue, and I've tested this, that you don't feel as much pain if you keep a straight face. It's the expression in your face that sends a message through this huge network of nerves behind the facial muscles, the facial nerve, the trigeminal nerve, straight into these kind of chemistry banks, if you like, in the brain and further beyond, that affect how much pain we feel and create, if you like, our reality. Because if I see something and I smile at it, if I look at a wall with nothing on it and I smile while I'm looking at that wall, I feel differently than I would if I looked at that same wall and pulled a frowny face. I'd feel differently because the facial expression that I have pulled has created a chemical reaction within, how we understand basic chemistry within the system that is a human being.
Yes.
So if you bring about what you would call facial neutrality, this is known that they did experiments where they injected people with Botox who were suffering stress. We'll call it stress. And they put it down to the two muscles here. I think they call them the corrugator supercilii when you frown. So they couldn't frown, basically, and they became happier because they just couldn't frown, so they weren't releasing those chemicals. Anyway, so if you bring about facial neutrality, you have no information going in or very little information going in. So all of those signals that are constantly going on within, our body, whatever you want to call it, the mind-body complex, that are trying to tell us, hey, there's something going on here. You might want to pay attention to it, which usually we don't notice it until it becomes pain. And then by that point, I'm not saying it's too late, but it's already reached a fairly serious point. You allow this stuff to come through. So, it kind of stops emotion, if that makes any sense. I don't know, that's a very wide statement, but kind of just lowers everything down. There's nothing going in anymore because you're not pulling any expressions. So without that information going in, saying you close your eyes, go into a sensory deprivation tank, there's nothing going in anymore. So everything else can come through more powerfully, if you like, and you can feel a lot more of what's going on in the system.
So when you said a lot, I've tested smiling. I've tested smiling with how I move and what I can do strength-wise. And I've tested frowning with how I move and what I can do strength-wise. And there's a definite huge difference. Like I know for sure that smiling helps me move better and it makes heavy things lighter. And frowning kind of stiffens up my body. And so that whole facial expression neutrality thing is really fascinating. So I get that. But when you were talking about focusing on the top lip and you said all these sensations came up, can you explain or expound upon that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to ask you to do it now, but if you were to just sit there and close your eyes and bring your awareness there, then say for example, one thing that I find is extremely powerful. If you ask to be shown, if you imagine this is the breath, we're not going to try and actually follow the breath. All we're doing is there's a little mini us sat there, and we're asking it to show us where needs to be fixed first. So what's going to happen then is, whether this is because the breath starts entering the body and it looks for, the breath wants to get into every tiny bit of the body, and if it can't find it, it finds blockages or whatever we want to call them. But you will notice stuff arise. Now, whether that's you just want to start moving your jaw, or whether you notice in the neck, oh, do you know what? I just need to move a bit there. If you sit there with it long enough, wait for something to arise, and if something doesn't arise, go back there. And if you find something arises, and then go back there again. And eventually, and again, I can't tell you exactly how it works, whether we're actually starting to follow the breath. Because as I said, the breath obviously brings in life force in one way, information. So whether or not it's a case of we are actually following the start of the breath, and when it can't get somewhere within the system, the energy, the intelligent energy within that breath can't get somewhere, it goes, okay, that needs fixing. It brings your awareness there, because as we know, when you focus on something, your energy goes there. It sends resources there, the system. So, or whether it's simply through reducing that input, you're hearing more. But I know that I've done this with quite a lot of people on Skype calls in the past, where if you sit with them and kind of help guide them to a certain extent, just making suggestions as to what they might feel, not with particular locations, stuff starts to come up. And what you tend to find is they need to start moving the face, and they might start moving their neck, and then all of a sudden, something might start going off in the shoulder. That's, I don't really have any deeper answer than that, other than if you bring about that state, particularly with the eyes closed. It just seems to reduce input so much that you start to feel these signals that you wouldn't have otherwise felt coming up, unless you performed a movement practice where you could feel them through that or otherwise.
So wait, so by focusing on your top lip, it helps you find areas in your body that might need attention.
Yes.
And then by focusing on those areas, you can stimulate healing or nourishing attention to that area. How does that work?
Yeah. Ooh. Exactly how it works, no one knows. The yogis believe that you send resources where your energy is focused on. So, the whole idea was energy follows thought. And, there's a lot of science out there. I couldn't even begin to get really, really deep into that. But there's a lot of very clever people out there who I would resonate with that say that, yeah, look, this is true. Where you focus your energy, where you put your attention, energy goes, your energy goes. And it's the same with the body. If you bring your awareness there, that's where energy goes. And that's why the body creates the sensation of pain. Quite often where there's nothing damaged, there's nothing structurally damaged, but it creates pain there. And if you bring your awareness to this, if anyone's ever been in kind of chronic pain or has had an injury, or if you ever find yourself with one in the future, if you just lie there and bring awareness to where that sensation is, if it's a minor tweak, muscle or something like that, you bring your awareness there, you'll notice that it very, very quickly moves the moment it's healed. And quite often it'll make little twitches in there and all kinds of stuff. So there's something going on there. Again, it's very hard to kind of nail it down with exact science. And I don't even know if I'd want to try, because it would be an extremely deep rabbit hole, but it works. I remember, I don't want to say helping a guy. There was a guy that I kind of know a little bit who rides mountain bikes. And he and his buddy did just basically had the same injury on the same day. Now, I can't say was one injury exactly the same as the other, but he'd done something like this before, and he knew that it took a long time normally to heal, and he was on crutches. So we got chatting, and I just suggested to him, have you ever tried this? So just go home, lie with it, and be with the pain. Just allow yourself to be with the pain. Close your eyes ideally, and when you feel whatever's going on in your ankle, just be there with it. Watch it. Ask it to teach you, to show you what's going on. What's it trying to do? Have the humility to kind of ask your body, what are you doing here? Let me have a look. Your teacher is showing you something going on here. And I saw him a couple of days later, and he was off his crutches, and he just came up to me, and he was like, and this is not me being a healer. That's not the point at all. This is how the body can heal. Simply by being there with something that's not optimal or broken in some way. Don't like to use the word broken, but so yeah. And he said, what the hell did you do? And I said, I didn't do anything, obviously. Like, all you did was, and I explained the basic theory behind it to him, and he was just clearly amazed, because he'd done it before, and he remembered how long it had taken him to get over it. And 2 days later, he was up running around when he'd been on crutches a couple of days before. So yeah, this is anecdotal. And a lot of modern science would probably say it's woo-woo, but then there's a part of modern science that's starting to catch up with this. And yeah, forgive me if I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but yeah.
No, this is fascinating to me. I read a book called Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins, and he talked about getting injured, and he said he kind of just sat with the pain and focused on it, and he said he described it as getting into pain, like inside of it, and somehow he said his body healed, and what would have taken months to heal, he healed in like just a few minutes. And it was, to me, so that stuff's very, very fascinating. And like, I read the story, but it's kind of hard to grasp. But now you're telling me a very, very similar thing too. But now the twitching, you said, if you focus on an area and you feel twitching and stuff,
Yeah.
is that the neurogenic tremors you were telling me about before, or is that something else?
It's believed to be, yeah. I mean, obviously, there are so many things we could attribute this to, in terms of like, how many mechanisms does the body have? Do we want to give them a name? This is where it's easy to get hooked up in words that we give things, and explaining, thinking that we know exactly how things work, biomechanics versus the embryonic ideas with the Psoas and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's believed to be a form of tremor initiated by the nervous system called a neurogenic tremor. So here we are, we have a problem. Okay, how are we going to fix this? Well, this is what the body can do to fix it. And I'm going to change the the frequency, if you like, the vibration, the composition of the matter in that area, because it's, if you think of this, with the basic biotensegrity model as an idea, if you like, that things can cluster like that. If there's damage, what do we do? Again, the body, the human system, when it's in fear for whatever reason, whether it's because it's hurt physically or emotionally, it stops movement. That's what it does. I remember Daniel Wolpert talking on this, the neuroscientist from Cambridge. Really funny talk years ago. But he talked about, and he used an anemone as an example. This anemone that basically it finds somewhere to live. Once it's got somewhere to stop and live and gather food, it eats its own brain because it doesn't need it. And he said, we're not that dissimilar in that our brain is for movement. That's what it does. It takes in information and it makes a decision. How am I going to move next? And when forgive me if I'm going off on a tangent here, but when we talk movement, and I know you know this, so forgive me if I'm teaching you to suck eggs, as they say, but movement really is everything in one way. In terms of, if we get down to like the tiniest particles that we possibly know of, it's all about how are they moving, how are they interacting. We talk chemistry, and it's like, okay, so yeah, we can look at certain pathways of how this molecule supposedly interacts with this when we take something into the system. But we also know that changing our belief can change that in a moment. So how that food or that chemical or that pill interacts with you can be changed, the placebo effect, for example. So we know that belief can change that just immediately. So, okay, so what has that done? It's changed the environment which that's coming into. Now, whether you want to talk about it changing that environment chemically, changing the frequency of the molecules, the particles within the body, we know that certain diseases exist at certain frequencies and so on and so forth. Whatever it is that we've done, we've changed that. And we've changed the way things move. And if that's what we basically do, it's our gift, our greatest gift as human beings. We move like nothing else. We have a capacity to move the way that no other creature does. Yeah, our fine skills are just, and I don't mean that derogatorily towards other creatures, but there is nothing that can move the way we do that has that capacity, and that's because that's why our brain, it's one of the reasons our brain is different. It's believed, that we have. Forgive me, this is bro science in terms of like I don't understand the depth of it, but I remember reading about the size of the microtubules or whatever they're called that fire across our brain are smaller, so they can fire faster. And this all, the basic end product of that is better movement, more dexterous movement, more the ability to move faster. When a neuron fires, and again, don't get me on neuroscience because that's not, I'm no specialist, but it's something moving. It's something moving around. Now, if we can change by simply believing something different or by moving differently, or we change the way stuff interacts with us because that's coming in and moving with it.
Okay, so I'm fascinated about the thinking on an area and causing vibrations to change or causing vibrations.
Okay.
So, just for example, in the last 3 days, I found a book written in 1925 about a Yogoda technique written by Yogananda.
Oh, yeah.
He was teaching people how to heal themselves by focusing on an area and encouraging them to vibrate. But in my mind, I don't know how that works. Like, how do I focus on an area to make it vibrate? So how do you do that?
Well, the first time I ever did it was simply through belief. And that was purely by accident because I'd read, I mentioned to you last time, the book on TRE.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's loads of ways you can do this, by the way. But simply by believing that area can vibrate. So this is going to sound nuts, but if anyone wants to try it, if you believe that the body has this innate ability to heal and that it has these mechanisms like neurogenic tremors, where if there's something not right, it will initiate whatever it needs to initiate to heal it. And you bring your awareness there, stuff will start to happen. Now, if nothing needs to happen, it probably won't. There's also here, do you pick an area and focus on it? I don't believe that's necessarily optimal personally, because I believe that if there is something to be fixed within the system, the system knows the optimal order in which to fix it. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. There was the belief with which I entered my kind of healing with, and I believe it took longer for me to heal to the point I'm at now than I believe I could have healed certain things quicker, but I would have been missing certain foundational things out. So I might have felt better to a degree by focusing on certain locations, but I wouldn't have created the foundations that needed to be there so that all that stuff that I'd fixed didn't collapse again at some later date because I hadn't fixed the basics. So I basically said, look, just show me how this is done. Fix me, please show me how to fix me the way that because I haven't got a clue. I've read this and I've read that and I've read that, and it seemed to be helping me, but it ended up not helping me because I got so lost in that and believing that I thought I knew stuff and that I had the answer, that I got very smartly kind of told, no, you don't, buddy. He has the answer, or however you want to view that. Your blueprint to the body has the answer. Ask me and I'll show you. Yeah, and it showed me. Now, I don't want to go on too much, but obviously another way of doing this is through movement, and this is where they're a similar thing. If you move through a certain pattern, there will probably be. I mean, for yourself, I'm not sure how much you've got left in there that's suboptimal, that might need a little tweak here and there. But it'll depend on someone's capability. The composition of their matter, how many little bits that they've got that are, restricted movement from beliefs or whatever. But through movement patterns, you will feel it. If you were to lie on your back and obviously slowly do a leg raise with one leg, yeah, most people, if they did that slowly enough, hence why, as you well know, slow movement is such a beautiful thing for finding this. They'll find something, probably. Most people will find something where the leg will either start to tremor or it'll start to move or waver.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the same thing.
Awesome.
We can call that fatigue, but it's highly unlikely that something's going to become. Yeah, I believe that that's another way of doing this. Really slow movement, going through a lot of the moves of OS, just will find all of this stuff so beautifully, and you can stop halfway through a movement and just allow it to play out, or however you want to do it.
So in our Pro Reset certification, we talk about so I think those neurogenic tremors, we call those, if I'm tracking right, we call those phasic shakes. And it is the nervous system a lot of times trying to learn a pattern or work its way through a pattern. And we do use speed or slow speed or holds to try to either create those or work through those. Because they'll start, like say somebody's trying to lift their head really slowly and then their whole head starts shaking almost not violently, but a lot.
Yeah.
But eventually they'll slow down and dissipate and go away. Is that pretty much like the?
Oh, boom. And I don't mean to interrupt too much. Just a quick one there. I believe that what's happening there, and I mean, you probably already know this, you can say, yeah, we know that, is that it's a lot of micro contractions, if you want to call them that.
Yes.
Yeah, because what needs to happen is to release, if you like, we'll call it a release, to release that area of tension, if you like, or suboptimal composition. It needs to go through a contraction. You can't force that by relaxing it. It needs to go through the contraction so you feel it the same way you would with a pandiculation. So you go right into it, it feels it, and it gets complete control, and then boom.
Interesting. That's really cool. So then that would be a form of healing, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, if everything that we have pretty much wrong with us, I mean, obviously this is not every single thing that could possibly be wrong with a human being, or not wrong. I don't like the word wrong, but you know what I'm getting at. We seem to be largely discovering that most of it is what we would call inflammation, in many ways, which to me is simply these clusters where, whether through beliefs, restricted beliefs. So again, it restricts movement. So whether you're injured and the system restricts movement because it's fearful of pain or it's trying to protect you, the same way that a belief where you're not open to the idea of that possibly not being the truth, you are restricting movement. This is what the system does. When it's fearful of going somewhere, whether that's the idea of believing something else or whether it's the idea of moving a certain way, it's all movement. So it has these, and the more restricted we are with our movement, basically the sicker we'll become. So whether that's, through sedentary lifestyle, sitting in a certain position and muscles becoming tight or shortened or whatever you want to call it, or holding on to a belief, whether you want to see that as like an early childhood trauma, which can cause massive, we'll call them knots, which are known to get built upon and built upon and built upon because every interaction that you have, Sorry, you were going to say something.
Would you call those knots trigger points?
There's another name for them. Yeah, it's, are trigger points these tiny little clusters? Quite possibly, yeah. Can they be released through manual work? It's one of those, isn't it? You get the neurological response. Obviously, we know by now that you cannot manipulate muscle and fascia with your hands to just change the shape of it as if it was a piece of Play-Doh. It doesn't work that way. It works from the neurological response that you get from the pressure and the sensation more than anything. That's a very oversimplistic view of it. And again, from my limited understanding through Tom Meyer's work and whatever, and Gil Headley and all those kind of people, that's how it works more than anything. So yeah, there's a myriad of ways that I guess you can work with it. And again, belief comes into it. If you believe that pain in your calf is a trigger point, and you perceive that as being this thing in fascia that's part of your nervous system effectively that's affecting the way that moves there, and you think that, right, if I put my thumb in there and hold that for that amount of time, that's going to dissipate. Well, guess what? It might just do that. And a lot of people have success through that. Most of the time you find it's limited, if I'm honest. From my experience talking to people doing that, and yeah, there's a whole host of reasons we could go into why it's limited, because it probably doesn't go through the full and necessary contraction or the restoration of movement that it takes to truly restore optimal movement there.
Well, so if it's caused from stress or tension from a negative belief, though, if you don't address the belief, wouldn't it just come back if you could get rid of it?
Yeah, that's quite likely. Then we go down the route of, okay, well, do we know what belief is causing that? Are we going to go searching for that and hopefully find it? And, as we said last time, going the psychological approach, if you want to call it that, can be massively beneficial. I guess if you can find someone that is able to dig that stuff out for you or help you dig that stuff out and address it, great. But what I've found personally, and I know a lot of other people have found this, is that by restoring optimal movement, you can do that. So, if you want to imagine that little cluster, if you like, where there's energy pulling all this stuff together to stop it moving for whatever reason, if you can get that moving optimally again, it just seems to dissolve. Now, that obviously will depend on, and again, this is not, the theories behind this, it's very, very hard to prove this without a doubt, because, how would you prove that, right, I've gone into that part of my body, I've manipulated that, and this belief's just gone? All I know is that when I've had what we'll call releases, and I've literally seen kind of images of stuff, like when I would have had obsessive compulsive behaviors when I was really, really not well, which was one of the things that came with it. Behaviors would disappear within 2 or 3 days. Things that, I couldn't ever imagine just going away that easily. And it was as very, very powerful, well, I'll call them powerful deep releases for want of a better term. I know a lot of people don't like the term release, but restoration of optimal movement. So instead of that restricted belief, let's say, for example, being protective of germs and having to wash your hands really, really, loads because you were worried about that belief, that area that was doing that, all of a sudden through being able to move that. Now, whether you did that through movement until you could actually feel that area through slow movement and you felt that very place and you allowed it to perform the neurogenic tremor or do whatever it did, and it would go. And along with that restoration of movement, the belief was gone too. And, for me, that's been probably the biggest part of this, that again, a lot of this is beliefs. I've approached this from movement. I was lucky enough to be shown, that's all I can say, movement at a level that just blew my mind, seeing literally everything at movement, almost seeing images inside of me as I was doing stuff of my nervous system, and every tiny little thing doing this. And I'm not saying it did show me, maybe that was partly, pictures that I've seen of the nervous system throughout time, and it was imposing those inside. I don't know. But I know that it can be done that way. If that makes any sense. And that's not meant in an arrogant way. It's meant in I've experienced that. I know others have experienced that. So it's one very powerful way of doing something, that you can move this body, which is, again, this body is the difference between you being pure consciousness. It's your experience is because you are in this physical body. That's what makes you and I different, is the stuff that's within this physical body. Otherwise, we'd be receiving, if we both vibrated exactly the same way from head to toe, we had exactly the same facial structure and, everything right the way down. I believe if it was absolutely completely the same, we'd have exactly the same experience of life. Because all the information that's coming in, obviously depending on the information we took in food and in everything else and friends and stuff, but the experience will be very much the same, because your experience is made different by all the stuff that's in here, whether we believe that's from passed on from previous generations or what.
Yeah, so the way I think of it is that we're information hounds, like the body craves information or experience. And so, but all that information, well, I've tried to explain this in a book I'm writing. We generate information, but we also receive information, and it's a cycle, because the information we receive ends up being part of the expression that we create, which is information that we generate. So we receive, and then we use it, and we create more information. And so it's just chicken or egg, chicken or egg, chicken or egg. But basically, the ultimate goal, to me, the simplified explanation, is that the nervous system always wants to feel safe. And if it feels safe, it will allow for optimal thought, optimal movement, full freedom of expression without any hindrances or tethers. But if the nervous system feels threatened, and it can feel threatened by the information you receive, hearing a bad news, or seeing something happen, or just a thought, because that's, it's all information. Or it can feel threatened by something that happens to you, like you stump your toe, or you're running and you twist your ankle. It's all information. But if that information is deemed as a threat, well, now the nervous system withdraws the ability to fully express. And maybe your thoughts get stuck. Maybe your range of motion gets stuck. Maybe you get pain somewhere, and it's trying to restrict you from doing something else. But yeah, to me, it's all a cycle of safe or not safe, not safe, which leads to thrive or survive. And that's a very simplistic explanation, but to me, that's really kind of how it seems to work.
Well, it seems to be largely true, doesn't it? I mean, that is, if we have this deep connection that we believe, let's say, the psoas. I don't like to go on about one particular muscle or biointelligent organ, but if we are to believe that it's true that is connected to the reptilian brain, so therefore fight or flight, thrive or survive, like you say. And what does that do? So the message gets sent from the brain, I want to move. Example, if someone is stood about to do their first bungee jump, right? And they could be, hey, I'm cool for this, up in the so-called brain, ready to go. And they just stop, they freeze. Why? Because the psoas has made the decision, no, buddy, you're not going anywhere. Because that's where, if you believe people like Liz Cott, people that have really studied the psoas, that's in all spine-based organisms. That's where movement, if you like, begins. Once the decision's made, that's where movement begins, right at the center of our X, the very, very center of our core. So that has the capacity to stop you from moving. Like you say, you get stuck. All these words, stuck, restricted, it's all movement. So yeah, it is. It's all thrive or survive. And like you say, if you can feel safe, and how do we feel safe? There are so many ways. If you're in an environment where you feel safe, if you're with people that you feel safe with. But as long as we have beliefs that make us feel unsafe. I mean, obviously, being surrounded by media and so on and so forth, like you say, you can change that. You can stop watching the news. You can do this. But if this stuff is somehow stored within you, and again, I don't want to go too woo-woo here, but well, it's not woo-woo, I suppose. If you look at the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, people like that, and the belief that we pick up information from the field or from God based on how we resonate. So if the frequency of you is that you're picking up, you're not picking up all the good stuff. Call that fearful, call it whatever you want. It's a contraction in here that's stopping you from expressing freely, as you say. So yeah, it is. For me, I think I'm sometimes annoyingly solutions focused. So it's like, okay, so how do we feel safe? Well, we need to get rid of those fearful beliefs that are hindering us. And again, for me, it comes back to really simple answer. And I know you used this expression before, the movement being the lowest hanging fruit. And I think, personally, I think it is. We can work with our thoughts. Yes, absolutely. But if you work with the body, your thoughts will change.
Yes.
Anyway, they will change. And you see it in people. You see it. I mean, you must see it all the time.
I have seen people who were certain that they had bad knees or they would never be able to squat, that I have seen them go from that certainty to a look of bewilderment and astonishment when they found themselves squatting all the way down to the floor without pain and with full range of motion. And what I witnessed was an instant belief change, or freedom. Freedom in thought now and freedom in body. And they kind of just happened. Well, I guess it happened in the body first, but until it was realized, it wasn't real. It wasn't true. But once they realized it and they found themselves sitting butt to calves when they hadn't done it in 20 years, then boom, then the whole new thought process was all over their face. So there's that whole facial expression thing you were talking about.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, I mean, like you said, it's so true. And not most people, because that sounds, like I'm saying most people wouldn't go, that's not the point. But if you told a lot of people that, they'd laugh. They were like, no, there's no way that guy's going to suddenly squat to that. But yeah, that sudden shift. And I'm sure that was it one of the wonderful things about original strength is obviously the way that you present it, because it comes with that belief. And I'm sure you've been there with them and your belief comes off on them. You're giving out that information. Yeah. The same way that you're, in vibration. Yeah. So it's,
I hope so. I do go into those workshops with a certain expectation that they're going to experience some really interesting changes.
and that gives off. You give that off. You're giving off vibrations. It's information, isn't it? It's still, whether we go string theory or whatever, you're giving that off, and that's huge. And that's why I think so many people resonate with you, is because that's, when you see that in someone, when you see someone that can move well, that can do this, that truly believes that you can do it, you give someone that belief in them and make them feel safe. Just like you said, you've made them feel safe. You made them feel that they can do that. And that's a hugely powerful thing.
So one of the, you don't know this, but we teach a workshop called Original Strength Performance. And towards the end of the workshop, we talk about leadership is one of the largest variables to increase performance. Because as a coach or a friend or a mentor or just anybody off the street, if you can look at somebody and tell them that you believe in them, they will do better at whatever, because you've kind of just imparted that belief to them, and they somehow receive it, and it does greatly affect performance, in how they move, how they think. It may take them out of fight or flight into the zone where they need to move well or do whatever, or complete whatever task they got to complete. And it's just as simple as, like, it's almost like passing a baton to somebody or a torch, and it's just it could be just a friendly smile or just a word of encouragement saying, I believe in you. And then boom, now you're running your 40-yard dash faster. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, this is how, if like faith healing, if you like, how does that work? If somebody has absolute belief in someone else, or they have a powerful belief in someone else for whatever reason, doesn't matter what the reason is, there you go. That person literally has to say, you look at some of the stories, you are healed. And, it sounds crazy to a lot of people, but it's happened. We've seen it happen. So, It's and while we're on that, I have to mention the smiling thing as well. The thing about smiling as well, and I don't want to spend ages on this. Where does your tongue go when you smile?
Towards the roof of your mouth.
Exactly. And in particular, if you think about smiling from here, from your philtrum, it's really, really lovely. You do that smile from inside. The rest of your mouth won't necessarily move, but you'll smile from here. You'll smile from here and here, where they do the Tao inner smile at the back. It's beautiful. Anyhow.
That's awesome. I got one last question for you. And it may be easy, may not be easy. So when you're focusing on the top lip and you're asking to learn or to be taught or to understand, are you asking the body or are you asking something else or someone else?
You can do that however you like. I mean, where I was originally when that happened, my belief was that I'd only recently developed that belief that the body has these innate mechanisms that can fix, and that it has a blueprint. It knows how it should optimally be. So if I go there, and I because I don't want to say I'd worked with the breath a bit, but I kind of had an understanding of how the breath works. When I say an understanding, these are my beliefs. Yes, they're based on readings and whatever. That when you breathe in, breath wants to find every tiny little nook and cranny of your physical body. Yeah, this energy that's coming in on the breath, this intelligent energy wants to feed. When you take a deep breath, you can feel it, can't you? You can feel it trying to get into every little tiny bit. So you can imagine that you're asking the breath to show you, but you're not trying to follow the breath. You're just asking the breath to show you, and the breath. You'll notice after doing it for a short while that you will start to follow the breath. And before you know it, you'll be like down in your neck here, and you'll have followed the breath. And you'll feel like you're following the breath going down into your shoulder and down into your back. Oh, it's stopped. Oh, it's found something. Oh, I want to move there. Oh, I've never noticed that sensation there before. You might be a bit stiff or whatever. So whether you want to ask God, whether you want to ask your blueprint of your body, it doesn't really matter. Whatever resonates with you, I think, because as with anything, these things change. Your beliefs change, or you become more open, if you like. So you can use whatever works for you. Some people will look at it and go, "No, it's just crazy. I'm not even going to try it." Cool, but give it a couple of minutes, and
So the hazard of saying I'm not going to try it is being closed. And sometimes you can't find anything until you're open. But anyway, that's a whole other.
Be open to everything and attached to nothing. They're not my words. I've stolen those from somewhere. But yeah, it's the more open that you are. Hey, if you're going to choose a belief system, why not choose one that works for you?
That's a good point. Well, you chose it anyway. Like if you believe it's crazy and you're not going to try it, well, then you're going to get the result of that, right? Or if you believe it works and you're going to try it, you're going to get the result of that.
Yeah. Or as we said before, go and do some of the movements, because this again, I'm dragging this out now, but I just feel that there's so much other stuff we could go on with here as well. With the movement, it works no matter what. Yeah, add the belief to it. I know we said this last time, but when you, I think it is worth reiterating. When you add belief to doing the movement, which is why what you do is so powerful, because you've got the belief there and you're imparting that to other people and giving it off. But just do the movement and feel it. Yeah, just do this. Just follow your breath and see what happens. Try it's.
And I'm not going to explain this well, and I could be completely off base, but I think the reason original strength works so powerfully as it does is because those movements are more of the original / true movements. So they're not the compensation movements. They're not all the movements that were created out of false beliefs or injuries or whatever, but they're more of the true, the original, which is truth, like movement. So you go back to the truth and you can kind of erase the stories.
Oh man, yes. Yeah, I love the way you word that. I love the way you put that. Yeah, because it is. It's that truth is everything. Call it love, call it truth. They're the same thing. But yeah, when you find that, it knows how it should work, and when it finds that through those movements, it's like, yeah, that's wrong.
So, and here's the cool thing. the truth is safe,
Yeah.
and anything that's false
Yeah.
is not safe.
Yeah.
And the body knows the difference.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. We've become afraid of the truth. But in the body, there's no hiding from it. Yeah.
Man,
I
Andrew,
love that, man. I love that. Thank you for that.
no, thank you. This is so much fun. I love talking to you because I'm always learning, and I'm like, oh, I don't. And what's funny is like, I mean, you get things from different areas and different parts and pieces, but the little things I think I almost know, I find out nah, and I get more information from you, and it just makes me want to have more questions, and I get more questions and more. I guess it makes me hungry to learn more. So I thank you for that. I guess is really what I'm trying to say.
Oh, vice versa, man. It's it's yeah. Look, it doesn't even need saying. It's we're all students and teachers, aren't we? And that's
Yes.
not said out of any false humility. It's just the more you go on with this, the more you realise, wow. But there is truth there. That's yeah.
So I forgot to ask you one question the last time we talked, and I apologize, but I got to ask you now. Crunchy peanut butter or creamy peanut butter?
Man, it's crunchy every time.
All right, my man.
Whole earth crunchy peanut butter.
All
There's
right.
nothing necessarily. I don't want to drag it. There's nothing necessarily wrong with smooth, but I can't remember the last time I had it. Do you
Say
ever dip dates in your peanut butter?
dates?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah. I
that's
was going to
great.
say, just like, I assumed you would have, but if you've never tried it, then yeah.
So the gold nugget in this conversation was dates with peanut butter.
Yeah, absolutely. The rest
All
of it's just nonsense.
right on.
Sorry, no, you know.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andrew Hutchinson. Andrew, thank you so much for being on the
Oh,
show.
thanks, Tim.
This
Joy.
is awesome.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Original Strength Podcast. If you made it this far, thank you so much.